This week, we are concluding our three-part series on archetypal characteristics by talking about willing characters, who they are, what makes them similar, and how to play them right after this. Hi, the Inspired Actor here. If you're new to this channel, we are dedicated to helping actors become better artists by offering these quick, roughly 10-minute acting lessons. We try to post these weekly, so if you want to see more videos like these, go ahead and subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as they come out. Also, take a moment before you forget and hit that like button, as it really helps me out. And if you know people who might like these videos, please don't hesitate to share them on your social media outlet of choice. So over the past few weeks, we have been talking about the Trinity of character psychology: thinking, feeling, and willing. This is what Michael Chekhov called the threefold body, in that we can draw on parts of our body to generate a psychological response. This can be useful in creating truthful characters and moments on stage and in film in a way that's both easy and fast. With continued practice, you can master this approach to bring about a fluidity and ease in building your character. You can also use this technique to find truthful moment-to-moment scene work by drawing on thinking, feeling, and willing centers as a dependable launching point from which to begin. In case you missed those videos, I'll put a link to them in the notes. Before we get into it, I want to thank Lisa Dalton and Will Kilroy from the National Michael Chekhov Association for their thoughts on the archetypal characteristics of thinking, feeling, and willing. Indeed, a lot of what I've been doing in these past videos have been based on their teachings, so thank you, and I'll put a link to their website in the notes so you can check out what they're up to. Now, to review, the thinking force is located primarily in the head. Thinking characters tend to lead from the head and move in a linear and rigid fashion. They tend to speak in a more monotone way than other types of characters and hit their consonants in a crisp and clear manner. Their quality of movement is flying, as thoughts can fly out of their mouths and their movement tends to be airy and light. Feeling characters tend to lead from the chest with curved and circular movement. They try to create curves wherever they can in their body and gestures. They have a flowing quality of movement with a feeling of fluidity to both their physicality and their vocal quality. They tend to accentuate the vowels, elongating them and emphasizing them whenever possible. Their vocal tone tends to be more melodic than other types of characters. They are also drawn to the sense of touch and luxuriate in the feel of things and people. Willing characters tend to be the most common types of protagonists in literature and drama. This is necessitated generally by the nature of drama, which is to provide the protagonist with as much conflict and obstacles to their overall objective as possible. This is by no means universal, as we have plenty of thinking and feeling protagonists to choose from. But willing characters tend to edge them out, I think, just because the will to succeed against overwhelming odds is such a huge part of the Western mythos, going back to Odysseus and Homer's The Odyssey. Action movies, epic quests, tales of survival, rags to riches stories tend to have willing characters as the main protagonist, because otherwise they may cry or overthink the problem at the first obstacle. Knowing the style of play or movie you're in is very important, as it can determine the type of character the script needs you to be. As we've discussed in previous videos, willing characters tend to lead from the hands, feet, and groin. When considering character psychology, superheroes are the easiest to figure out because the nature of their characters are archetypal generally, and their centers tend to be where they draw their power from. For example, it's easy to see that Tony Stark is a willing character despite the fact that he is a super genius. He shoots beams from his hands and has jets in his feet. And particularly in the first Iron Man movie, he is driven by his libido. This is a no-brainer in my view. He's a willer. Batman is known for his utility belt and for punching bad guys. You can literally buy just Hulk's hands as a toy, and that's really all kids need to pretend to be the Hulk, other than painting themselves green. So again, this is pretty easy. Captain Marvel, Black Widow, Thor, Hawkeye, Drax, all pretty solid, willing characters who lead from their hands, feet, or groin. Not all superheroes are willing though. Vision is thinking. Superman, Captain America, Spider-Man are feeling. This affects their stories and the way they are told. Batman movies are pretty much over when he defeats the bad guy, but Spider-Man and Captain America tend to be love stories that are only resolved when the hero gets the relationship that they desire or are able to save the people they love. Let's move on from superheroes to talk about vocal mannerisms. Rocky.
I'll tell you, a long time ago, there was this guy, maybe a couple hundred years ago, he was fighting around, I think it was around Philadelphia.
Olivia Benson from Law and Order.
That alibi that you were talking about, the video from your building, that also confirmed that you weren't home the night that Dallas was attacked.
The Cowardly Lion.
Put 'em up, put 'em up! Which one are you first?
Whereas thinking characters speak in a monotone and feeling characters speak melodiously, willing characters tend to be more guttural and dental, particularly hitting the hard palate behind the teeth when they speak. This is why in America, one of the most common stereotypes for tough guys and strong women is a Northeastern American dialect of some sort. New York, Philadelphia, Boston, New Jersey. All of these dialects fit the archetype because all of them tend to use their fricatives with force. Sounds like g, d, ch, and s. This archetypal characteristic also tends to turn plosives into glottal stops. So hitting becomes hittin', fatten becomes fatten, boating becomes boatin', and so on. Plosives are hit more gutturally and with less crispness than thinking characters. True becomes drew, take becomes take, talk becomes talk. Willing characters tend to speak right from their lower abdomen. Their voice, like everything else about them, tends to be very grounded. Even when the dialect is more subtle, like with Olivia Benson from Law and Order, you still sense that her voice is more grounded and forceful than in a feeling or thinking character. Even the Cowardly Lion, whose character is really defined by a lack of courage, or will, uses a New York dialect and has a guttural growl to his voice. Now let's look at the willing character's quality of movement. Tyler Durden from Fight Club.
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
Humphrey Bogart generally.
We're both of us sitting under the gallows. Now, why did you shoot Miles?
Michelle Rodriguez generally.
Shut up. When I tell you to do something, you do it. I say move, you move. I say stop, you stop.
Tyler Durden is the main character's fantasy of what a strong-willed, powerful man is. He is meant to represent the opposite of how Edward Norton's character views himself at the beginning of the movie. A weak-willed, IKEA-loving, modern male who is disconnected from his own masculinity. Tyler Durden stands like a tree, giving the rules of a club he created, surrounded by tough men who follow him as the alpha male. Not that willing characters have to be masculine or typically male in any fashion. However, the protagonist's view of masculinity is strongly attached to the archetype of willing. Tyler fights with his fists, has a strong libido, and is powerful and unmovable like a tree. Humphrey Bogart is another masculine ideal, strongly attached to archetypal characteristics of willing. Like Tyler Durden, Bogart's character tends to be earthy and strong. Here, he is more like a tree that Mary Astor clings to as she begs him not to turn her in, reaching for her neck like his hand was the noose and his body the tree. Pretty chilling, and you know what? This stuff really holds up. I want to stress, though, that the willing force is no more a masculine force than feeling is a feminine force. Here we see Michelle Rodriguez as Ana Lucia in Lost, utterly destroying Sawyer. Again, she is very earthy in her vocal quality and movement as she takes Sawyer to the ground and gives commands. One does not need to be kicking butt and taking names to be a willing character either. The femme fatale character type usually shows many of the characteristics of willing. Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, for example, exhibits a very earthy vocal quality, sometimes softly growling her lines and remaining quite still but not rigid like thinkers.
No, I said I like Johnny to use his hands.
And if she doesn't lead from the groin, I don't know who does. Let's go back to Humphrey Bogart to talk about angles. Thinking characters tend to be linear and straight, and feeling characters tend to be curved and circular. Willing characters, however, tend to be angular in shape and movement. Bogart rarely misses an opportunity to create angles with his arms or his head. While he walks in a straight line, he also finds angles by moving sideways at times or quickly changing direction. This is a common trait of a willing character. On the comedic side, I think a good example of a willing character would be Ace Ventura. Young Jim Carrey was characteristically angular, bending his body in various shapes. Also, all of his movements had a lot of weight, which, juxtaposed with his light frame and speedy tempo, had a comedically frightening effect. And as for leading from the hands, feet, and groin, case closed. Here are some examples of other willing characters and people. George Jefferson, the bride from Kill Bill,
Your mother had it coming.
Al Pacino, generally,
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart.
Bruce Lee, generally, Katniss Everdeen from The Hunger Games,
You can torture us and bomb us and burn our districts to the ground. But do you see that? Fire is catching.
Han Solo from Star Wars.
I don't have it with me.
Can you think of some more? Let me know in the comments. So to sum up, willing characters lead from the hands, feet, and groin, have a guttural vocal quality, tend to emphasize fricatives like g, d, j, ch, and s, tend to have a molding or earthy quality of movement, tend to create angles in their body and gestures. Finally, I want to leave you with this. You may notice that I have used Wizard of Oz references throughout this threefold body series, and I think it's a great way to remember these archetypal qualities for the future. Dorothy has a very clear objective, which is to go home. She meets three friends along the way who help her achieve this goal: the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion. Thinking symbolically, the Scarecrow represents her thinking psychology. He is made of straw, which are really little rigid sticks that compose his entire body. The Tin Man represents her feeling psychology. Although he is a robot man, he is composed of various circular metal parts. He seeks a heart and tends to elongate his vowels and speaks harmoniously. The Cowardly Lion represents her willing psychology. He leads with his paws, speaks gutturally, and is closer to the earth and nature, being a wild animal. So Dorothy must use her mind, her heart, and her strength of will to reach her objective. And once she realizes she has and always had those three things the whole time, she immediately obtains that objective. I think it adds a cool quality to the movie that may or may not have been intended, but is still interesting to think about. What do you think? Did you find any of this helpful? Do you have any questions about archetypal characteristics? Let me know in the comments. Next time, I will be talking about the only 6 tactics that you will ever need to play as an actor. So don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified as soon as I post it. Thanks for watching, colleagues, and I'll see you guys later.